Well, hello, everyone. Looks like we have a couple people on, Mary and Gerald.
Hi.
Yeah,
Yes,
hi.
I'm here.
Yeah, hello. So good morning, good evening. I'm not sure where everyone is at, but thank you for joining.
I'm outside of Chicago.
Okay, all right. So yeah, good day then to you.
Yeah. Where are you located?
I'm in San Diego. So,
Okay.
and
It's snowing here. I bet it's not snowing in San Diego.
it's not, no. Yeah, I heard it's snowing everywhere.
Except San Diego.
No, that's right.
I'm in Pretoria in South Africa, and it's a lovely summer evening here.
Oh, nice.
Oh, that sounds wonderful. Jacob, how are you? Let's see, still on mute. Perhaps getting Zoom to work still. Yeah, Mary, I used to live in Minnesota, so I know the whole Midwest, winter thing is yep.
It's a lifestyle for sure.
All right. And let's see, I think we may get a couple more folks jumping on here in a bit. I did get some more accepts on the invite, despite the kind of odd timing of this. So thank you all, so close to the holidays when people are off. For me at least, I get a little more time to work on things such as this. So I hope to be busy here over the next week, but I wanted to get some guidance and some feedback from the broader team. And I will see if Shane told me, Shane's not here, but he told me when I log in, I should have the controls. So working here. So apologies if this does not work, but here I will share a bit here. Let's see. Can everyone see that okay?
Yep.
Okay. And sorry, bear with me while I just get one sharing item set here, and then we can begin. I thought maybe if you don't mind, since we're in a smaller group, if maybe a quick introduction might be helpful. Sorry, I'm trying to get back to the meeting group here. All right. Well, I'm fortunate. I'm not gonna be able to see. I don't think I can see messages coming forward. But so please jump in if you have a message to say or some input. But I'm Nathan Kumagai. I work for Qualcomm. I'm an attorney in our open source group. Been around the community for quite some time. I was 6, 7, 8 years, something like that. And typically I was doing a lot of work kind of behind the scenes, helping with some of the kind of marketing efforts. One of the things early on I recognized is how important it is to be able to explain what we do to people outside our community, right? Because in open source we have such kind of shared lingo and it's a small community, but as the needs for open source compliance have grown, at least the understanding of it has grown. You know, so many more new people are jumping on board, and you know, I think this has gone from some kind of niche area to some kind of big area of compliance, and so, you know, I think the more we can do to kind of smooth the way toward making, you know, our content accessible and making accessible content for people to, you know, not have to just start from scratch when they tell the story about here's why open source compliance is important, here's what we need to do. So I think this group is really important. It's really exciting to be part of, because I think this will be one of the keys to getting OpenChain to the next level of reaching, you know, the masses. So so great to meet you all, and thank you for joining today. So and if you don't mind, would everyone just mind just saying their name and maybe just a sentence or two?
Sure. My name is Mary Matron. I've been working with open source probably for the last 7 years in different degrees, and a little bit more so with OpenChain over the last 2 or 3 years. In my company, I've helped create training, some basic training for open source for developers and managers. And we're using some of the Linux Foundation training as part of our basic core training for developers as well.
So yeah, thank you, Mary.
Another Mary here, Mary Wong. Can you hear me?
Yes, and I'm sorry, Mary. You know what? I saw 2 Marys on. I assumed it was Mary Matron both times. So yeah.
I think I'm new here, and I'm also doing this open source training material for our company, World Cars now, and we are forming our Osborne recently. So yeah, I use this OpenChain training material as a skeleton also when I created our training material. So it's good to be here and listen and contribute and involvement. Thank you.
Oh, that's wonderful. So thank you for joining and welcome here. I didn't catch the company you're with, or who are you with?
World Cars.
Okay. Well, thank you for joining today. I look forward to working with you. So.
And by the way, I'm located in Sweden.
Ah, okay. Well, yes, thank you. Thank you again. I do think, does this time work well for you, for your time zone?
6 p.m.
Yeah.
Quite good.
It's a little bit of a struggle to find time for everyone, but yeah, we can move this meeting around a little bit. Anyone else like to jump in?
Hi, shall I jump in, Gerald? I'm Gerald O'Sullivan. I think I'm in a similar time zone to Mary. I'm in South Africa, in Pretoria. So it's 7 p.m. here, so the time suits me well.
Okay.
I've got a software development company, but we have a big interest in open source software and cloud native software and cloud native governance in particular. So myself and a couple of colleagues have been very intrigued by the OpenChain project, and we would like to contribute where we can. Obviously, it's new I suppose it's new internationally, but we're very keen to bring it to South Africa, to Southern Africa, our neighbors as well, and try and localize the standard to become a South African specific standard. So that's my interest, is as it is yours, Nathan, to evangelize and to get it out there and grow the community.
That's wonderful. That's exactly what we'd love to see in our community. And so thank you for joining. Really glad to have you here. So and I'm sorry I can't see the invite list anymore since I shared my screen, but anyone else? Okay, well, not hearing anyone else, I will dive into what I wanted to chat about a bit. I think first of all, if Shane had asked if we would do a little work on this document, you know, going through this. But I think if you don't mind, let me just start a little higher level. I wanted to just ask you, get a little feedback on what would be the best way to work as a team. I think, you know, I can certainly do different times. You know, I could do an hour earlier than this, or you know, switch around to some evening times if we wanted to include some folks from you know, Asia. But my initial thought was, you know, what if we have this meeting, you know, a little more frequently? People can kind of drop in when it works for them. You know, I could certainly do this on a, you know, bi-weekly basis at least. Maybe I'd have a couple of meetings for different time zones and just kind of, you know, while we have windows open, just work on things together in kind of this format. And so I think that's my initial thought, you know, at least to try to keep progress moving that way. Does anyone have any other, does that sound good to everyone, or is any other feedback to that? You know, with the other understanding that no one can make every meeting, of course, but just want have the opportunity for progress and for people to get involved. So.
Yeah,
Sounds good.
I think that does sound good.
Okay. Well, I think my guess is I think we won't have something maybe next week, but maybe back in the first week of January, when Shane's back, I'll talk to him and we'll get something regular on the calendar. So I expect to see that, and then, you know, following these meetings, I'll send out, you know, some links and just quick summary of what we did as a team, so people can be involved in a you know, offline way as well. One of the things I did though is, you know, I've took a look through the reference material and through the website, and what I was hoping to find was maybe a core group of material that's, you know, most important to bring forward. You know, what are the most polished and most important pieces that we want everyone to see, because, you know, we do have limited kind of space to draw attention to on the website. These might also be, I think, the most important materials, I think, to dig into, you know, for these sessions as well. You know, so I pulled together this list. You know, I think, can I ask, I know for folks who have done training, I think the education packs, the training slides, you know, I'm sure have, or hopefully have been useful. But can I ask, has any particular material been useful to anyone here that maybe I haven't listed? Or maybe something you see here that's been most helpful?
I think the path to conformance has been very valuable. And in fact, myself and a couple of colleagues were just wondering, would it be useful even to, you know, use this as a basis for some kind of maturity model, or kind of, you know, as you're doing your self-assessment questionnaire, you know, to try and then out of the results of the questionnaire, pull a kind of path or a kind of set of milestones to a fuller conformance, depending on whether you're a small, medium, or an enterprise level institution.
Okay.
But I think there was some kind of reluctance. The trouble with the maturity framework is that it can also then kind of be a bit of a disincentive, because you might say, well, you know, I'm so low down on this kind of level of maturity, you know, it kind of looks bad. So one doesn't want to disincentivize people to get on the road to conformance. But I think it would help to have some sort of, you know, milestones documented that people can understand where they are in the journey.
So kind of like an assessment of where you were at?
Yeah, I'm not sure if you're familiar with that, the maturity, there was a kind of standard model for maturity, the CC, I forget the full
CMMI.
name. Yeah, that's
CMMI.
it. CMMI model. Yeah. Whether we shouldn't adapt that sort of model to conformance.
You know, I'm not terribly familiar with that. Is that something like, let's see here.
It's capability maturity model integration. And before it was called CMMI, it was Software Engineering Institute, and so there were 5 levels. One being levels, well, I guess kind of 6, because you'd start with level 0, which means you have no idea what you're doing. The fact that you have any success at all is random.
Okay.
And then up to you have a working, a robust process, and you have ways to improve that process over time.
Yeah. Thanks for that, Mary. You've jogged my memory. Level 0 was kind of ad hoc processes, and the level 1 was defined but not kind of adhered to, and you sort of move up the scale, and it's kind of level of optimizing and improving.
Okay.
Yeah.
You know, and I think, you know, I'll flip to this for a moment here. You know, yeah, we brought it down to, you know, and I'm looking, sorry, offline as well at the CMMI levels. You know, it starts kind of like initial, and then there's like a managed level, right? And then a process where you're defining the processes you need, and then at some point you become, I don't know if they use this everywhere, but quantitatively managed, meaning you're actually implementing your processes, measuring how it's working, and then finally to an optimization point.
Yeah.
Yeah,
so
that's very similar. Yeah, excellent.
Yeah, and so, you know, I wonder if, you know, initially we kind of broke it into, hey, you know, people need to be aware of open source. You know, maybe sometimes that's the level people are at, is they need to understand what they need to do, and that kind of meets like these kind of first couple levels, right? And then I think definition or management kind of goes into the second level here. Do you see value in like defining it, breaking it down more than what's here? Like maybe having more steps? I just ask, I wonder if we could line up some of these. Oh, sorry, Mary, go ahead.
Well, maybe if we were to like take the self-assessment checklist and say, you know, do these things first, then do these things, and then do these things, kind of giving kind of a gradient scale of implementation. It's a little bit different from this maturity model thing.
Okay.
But could be helpful.
Okay. So like say in this questionnaire, if I'm hearing you right, you would say like list priorities here, or process to like implement in steps.
Well, yeah, I guess just, you know, like what should you do first?
Okay.
I mean, my organization, we did it kind of backwards. We just beat people over the head and said, you have to do open source compliance, and they had no idea what it was, and they just sent us some stuff, and it was a mess. So we didn't have a policy to start with, and maybe that's the first thing you need to do, is have a policy. Or,
okay.
You know what I mean? And then start to build awareness, and then some of your compliance steps will follow from that, or they can occur at the same time as you're building awareness or something like that.
Okay. So perhaps like a guide, or path to conformance kind of guide.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh.
Yeah.
Is that Gerald?
Sorry.
Gerald, is that what you were thinking of?
Yes. Yeah. But I think maybe the CMMI framework is a little too prescriptive and a little too granular. But I do think it's worthwhile pulling out elements of the CMMI framework and then mapping them to the conformance guide to say, you know, okay, you are aware of open source, but your processes and your, your open source project office is, ill-defined or whatever, and then sort of help, use that to enrich your sort of roadmap to compliance or to conformance. Because I think there are about, I think in the CMMI framework, correct me if I'm wrong, I think it's about 6 or 7 levels, which might be a bit too onerous for what we're trying to do. So perhaps we just need to pull out a couple of elements of that and then map it to what you showed us just now, Nathan, the level 1, the level 0, level 1, level 2.
Yeah, okay. And here I'm going to try to let me see if I can pull up at least one of the models I was looking at. I mean, this has got, sorry, this is kind of what you're talking about, right?
It's not
Yeah,
kind
that's
of
it exactly. That's it exactly. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Yeah, and
But-
if it's
but-
okay, oh, sorry, go ahead, Mary.
OpenChain actually doesn't do all these levels. It doesn't cover all of these levels.
Yeah.
It really goes up to level 3, I would say.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And I think some of this stuff, that maybe gets into a little bit more of 4 and 5, do come up in some of the work group. But yeah, I think as a spec, we're trying to get people at least to kind of this 3 level. So I do actually kind of think that matches up to, I think what we have. I think we just need to fill it in into kind of a guide form. So like level 1 is kind of that initial level, right, where people aren't aware. Level 2 gets us to at least knowing what to do, right? And then level 3, I think, is where you've put things into place, and then you say, at least we guide you through how to conform, right? Like, do you feel like is this a structure we can work with, or do we need to?
Yeah,
like,
no, it does map nicely, I must say.
Okay. How would I do this here? You know what? I'm gonna. Sorry, I don't use Zoom every time, but let me see if I can. Oh, here's my messages. And looks like Hutch, you're here. I didn't see you here. Hello.
Hello, no worries. Zoom has a very odd UI.
Yeah. All right. So Jim Hutchison's online. He's my colleague from Qualcomm in the open source group. All right. So I sent this link to everyone here. It's the, and if you're okay with working on Google Docs, I think I know I think that's one way we can kind of do real-time editing if we all want to, at least, even if we all want to type in language here, we could do that. And I'll start setting up these docs so that we can kind of collaborate from meeting to meeting here. So let's see here. Okay, so I'm really loving the idea of turning this into a guide, though, right? Like,
yeah. So Nathan, from my side, I'll volunteer to unpack CMMI a little bit more and just map it to these level 1, level 2, level 3, just to see if there's any elements in the framework that would illuminate a bit more about the path to conformance.
Okay. Yes, thank you. That sounds wonderful. Let me get my. And everyone's editor is on this, by the way. So if you have, things you want to drop in, please go ahead. I will say, going through this, one of the things I was thinking is, it'd be nice if these questions were answered somewhere. I think they kind of illustrate the level well, but we don't actually have the answer directly somewhere. in the FAQ, and I'll drop a link here. I'd suggested at least some for the first three, some answers. I wonder if it's useful to have those in the FAQ. You know, I did put that there. Let's see here. I'm going to share the FAQ link as well with everyone.
I have a question.
Yes, please.
For this level defined for this conformers, for myself, there's a compliance specification, right, for this conformers. Compliance specification 2.0. I think if you meet all the requests or all the specifications, then you are conformers. You are conformant. What is the purpose to define this level here, and what is the meaning for this? What is the use case?
And just to make sure I understand the question, I know that the term defined is used. Are you talking about this maturity level 3, like reaching here in CMMI?
CMMI maturity level can be used for many areas, yes.
Okay.
But for the conformers, compliance conformers, why we need this?
Yeah, so she's asking what is the point of doing this in the first place? Because to meet the standard, you have to meet the requirements. So you just fulfill the requirements and then you're done.
Yeah.
So what value add is there of breaking it up into these levels?
Yes.
Oh, sure.
That's my question.
Yeah, sure. At least I can tell you kind of what I think, and others can jump in. You know, I found that you know, especially early on, we found there's folks that you know, we'd hand on the specification and then we'd say, hey, can you reach that? And it was kind of like we're trying to get people from, you know, level 1 straight to like level 3 is conformant. And we realized, I think some process, like some journey had to happen where people were able to convince people internally to, you know, about what the issues were
But it's
compliance.
quite clear written in the specification, like you need to have the policy in place, strategy in place, training in place, etc., scanning, license notice and so on. So it's quite detailed there. If you do that one by one, then you are done.
Well, I wonder if, at least for, you know, and I know this is true for my organization and some others too, is like, you know, we might have scanning, like a scanning capability. And we might have a policy, but it's kind of another thing to make sure that, you know, the engineers who have to follow the policy or who have to submit the code for scanning, you know, that there's a process in place to do that.
Is
a lot of
this
people
level? Is this level
Sorry,
1 to level 3 is like to whom? Who will use this?
Oh, who's this document targeted at? Like this path to conformance? I think it's okay. So maybe this is what I think I see what you're getting at. You're saying like why have this and a specification, right? If specification tells you where to get to, right? Like why have these levels as well? Right?
And also with the open source maturity level, you know, okay, that maybe is not that related to the compliance. I would like to have this purpose of this, like the use case, the target group, the why we are doing this first. Then we are going to work on it.
Okay. Well, maybe
that's my opinion. I mean,
sure. No, of course. Yeah. No, that's probably, we should agree on that. I would say, like, you know, sometimes I think this is almost for our own community. You know, we want to get everyone to level 3, right? But I think for our own community, it's good to organize, you know, our own materials so that we know, you know, when we're telling people, what is open source compliance, right? We know that we're helping educate them about why they would come to us. But then we also need to tell them, how, or give them some resources to understand the hows of things. So maybe we get them on board with this, but then they still have questions about, how to, get the scanning in place, or, what elements they need, right? So, sorry, I wonder if I'm missing your question though.
I don't, maybe this is my first time to join this meeting. I still haven't get the purpose of this yet, because you said it's for your own community, for communication. But for me, it's quite clear enough. We have the ISO standard, we have the specification. You do it one by one, then you are done. It's not like, okay, level 1 to 3, it's kind of maturity stuff. It's not in order or sequence. That's my opinion. Because for this specification, 2.0, if you have all ticked, then you are conformant. If you are not, then you are not conformant.
Okay.
So how to define this kind of, this is more like the level 1, 2, 3, it's more like the maturity of compliance. It's like, okay, if you are 3, or you are compliant.
Yeah.
If you are 1, you are not. But how to define this? For example, if I running my training, is that 1? That's my question.
Oh, I think I see what you're saying. I think we're still saying that, getting to conformance, being conform with the specification, like you are, you're level 3. Okay. That means that, you understand the specification, you already have the processes in place. You're at our path level 3, and we can change the names if that helps. But what we realize though is, we could show people the spec, but unless they understood, what is open source license and security compliance, unless they understood, like, how do you put processes into place, right? Then they didn't really understand the spec, so for people who are coming very new to the community, we need to have, an entry point for them so they can understand, okay, at a base level, what are we doing here? And so we'll have education material to help them understand, why they need to do this. What is open source compliance, right? And then we can help them with, practical steps about, how to put processes in place, what kind of processes you need, maybe some checklists and things like that. Here's what we did. And that helps them reach to the level of, being OpenChain conformant. Yeah. The levels aren't like level 1 or level 2 doesn't mean you're partially conformant. It just means you're getting closer to, through your own internal process of reaching the ability to click on, the self-certification questionnaire and say that you're conformant. For a lot of new folks coming to this community, they just need a little, there's some process they need to go through, before they can really understand the spec and put it into place in their organization. So I think the goal for this is not to change the spec or add anything to it, or we're not saying, oh, you're partially compliant at a certain point. We're just helping people get the information they need to, make decisions, or to convince people in their own organization how to, put processes into place.
So basically, it's for a company coming new to this, or a business coming new to this, and maybe a possible path for them to get to conformance if they don't know how to do it. And if it's too overwhelming for them to just read the specification and implement what it says there, which, you're in automotive and you understand process and process models and stuff like that. And so that's not that hard for you. But for other companies that might be a little bit less structured, let's say, they might have some difficulty with it. So it would be more of a path to implementation. Like you need to make sure you have this in place first and then that, and it would be optional. It's not required, but it's just something that would help people who are unfamiliar.
Yeah, I'd like to concur with that, to say that, you know, these different levels would give rise to a kind of gap analysis to say, this is where you are in your journey, and these are the next steps, and then help your, you know, clients sequence those steps to get to level 3, or, you know, however else we define it. You know, I mean, we can, as our own companies, we can do it internally, but if we're selling those services to explain to the fintech industry, I mean, a big issue in South Africa is that, you know, the big corporates aren't really aware of the issues that OpenChain is opening. Help, you know, we have to help them confront these issues and show them the roadmap. So yeah, that gap analysis is important.
I see. Maybe different company. If a new company, small company, that don't have the specific like open source people or expert to work on it, maybe it's difficult for them.
Yeah, and it happens quite often. You know, we'll have folks show up and you know, so, you know, sometimes people show up and they're the ones assigned to put, you know, open source compliance into place, and they don't have experience with it, and so they're looking for help, knowing what to do, and also how to convince their own, you know, executive levels to, you know, invest resources in this, right? So we found it's easy if we can give them some slides and some resources to help, you know, help them make those decisions and have those discussions, right? So they don't have to start from zero to do it.
Yes, I see. I see the point.
Yeah.
So, but particularly if there's so they're being exposed to kind of license related issues. I mean, there could be risks in terms of breaching, you know, GPL license or, you know, whatever. So, I mean, that's a huge push to become conformant.
Yep. Yeah. So I think if we were to kind of beef this document up, though, and I'm sorry, Mary, is that answer the question? Is that?
I think so. Even though for me, it's like if anyone working in this area, the first thing is the training, right? Then they need to get the training first. After they get the training, I think it's quite obviously or straightforward to understand this specification and stuff. But maybe I cannot represent everyone or in all companies, big and small, so it's different.
Yeah, we hopefully our training is, you know, clear enough that people can reach those conclusions, you know, quite easily. But you know, if you know, people that don't have background in this, you know, they're experts in other things. You know, it can take a little while for people to understand the importance and, you know, of this area. So yeah. So if it's okay, maybe could we take a pass through this document and find some maybe actions we can take, or ways to beat this up? Can I ask, do people like how this first level is described? You know, should we use different words other than level, or, you know, are there other materials we can point people to? Like I know like our training slides, for instance, or perhaps our FAQs might be good resources if people are, you know, asking these kind of questions, right? You know, what is open source? You know, what are the compliance needs? Or they have a need to explain to people, you know, their own, you know, directors or their own executives, you know, why do we have to do this? Why do we have to invest resources in scanning? You know, does this format help as kind of a guide to say, hey, you know, if you're wondering about these things, go look at these resources? Or, you know, Mary Gerald, as far as like the CMMI levels, do we need to be a little more prescriptive to kind of get them through this?
Yeah, I think let me go through the mapping exercise, and I think that will inform that. The one thing I would just add to level 1 is what kind of risks does it expose your company to if you're not aware of your the licensing of the various open source components that your developers are using to develop products. Because I mean, there are issues around you know, intellectual property rights, and you know, if you injected your GPL licensing into some sort of other licensing model that you might have used. So I think some kind of guidelines for risk managers, or you know, just looking at corporate governance. I think at level 1, one does need to be aware of those sorts of risks. You know, which goes beyond technical risks. It's much more about governance, you know, corporate governance risks.
Okay.
Sorry, I'm jumping around a little bit, but yeah, I mean, my first point is, you know, I'll volunteer to do the kind of basic CMMI mapping to this level 1 and see if anything emerges from that. But then my second point is to say, at level 1, at least you need to get your risk manager involved. You know, a lot of big companies do have a kind of corporate risk manager or something like that.
Okay. And I think, and I'll say this, like, when we put this together, one of the original ideas with this path to conformance was to point people toward like OpenChain resources that were friendly for the questions they're asking. You know, if you go to this, you know, our GitHub site, right, in our reference material, there's an awful lot you can go through, right? And it's not really evident, you know, what's useful to you. And so I feel like we need somewhere to point people to say, you know, check out these resources, right? Yeah. Is there anything that OpenChain has done that's been particularly helpful? You know, for any of you in terms of resources? I know we have this education pack, we have the training slides.
Yeah, for me, I mean, these packs have been very, very valuable. But I mean, now that I'm thinking a bit more broadly, I'm not sure if you know, not just this working group, but the other working groups, I mean, are we thinking about doing YouTube videos and, you know, those bigger kind of outreach efforts to explain what the standard's all about and how it benefits companies?
Yeah. You know, I think, you know, some of the more produced kind of things, you know, tend to take a little more planning effort. We have, I think the most popular things we have in kind of video form have been some of the talks that like Shane has done, or some of our other members have done at conferences, which effectively do kind of what you're speaking of. They, you know, it's like their walkthrough, the half-hour, 45-minute walkthrough introduction of what OpenChain is. But maybe that's a resource that's needed at this level, though, right? Education videos. If you haven't seen that walkthrough, Gerald, I'll see if I can find it where Shane was talking about OpenChain.
Yes, yeah, I have seen some of those. Yes, yeah. I was just thinking, you know, something which is much more specific to, you know, what this group's about. You know,
Okay. Okay.
take people in a more. I suppose the problem is I've been watching a Udemy video about something else altogether, and just suddenly thought to myself, maybe we kind of need a Udemy or a what's the other training platform? Something on OpenChain.
Yeah, Mary Matron, do you have? You said you're using some of the Linux Foundation material, right, for the introduction stuff for your training?
Yeah.
Is there anything in here we should be pointing to for the LF materials?
I think we're using LFC 193. Let me check. And then we're also going to we're going to do some contributor training because we don't do much of that yet. We're trying to get some of that going, and we'll use some Linux Foundation training there too. And I can't really tell you what it'll be yet.
Okay. Maybe that would be a good thing, right? Instead of, we wouldn't reinvent the wheel, right? We could kind of point people to, at least for basic education, because anything in this level really it's not that OpenChain specific, right? This is all why you would do OpenChain, why we're important, right? This kind of sets the context for why OpenChain exists. And then once we get to level 2, that's when we really need to educate about, right? Here's the spec, here's what it means. Here's some work groups that can help you figure out how to implement it, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so LFC 193 is really good for introductory stuff. We created our own introduction to introduction training kind of to define some of our own policies and where to find information and stuff like that. But LFC 193 goes around and talks about software rights and licensing, open source licenses, what they are, what it means to do open source compliance, stuff around building and distributing your code, stuff like that. So real kind of basic compliance topics.
Okay, that's super helpful, I think. And then like the policy information you were saying ahead of that, do you feel like there was like an on-ramp needed to LFC 193, or was that just kind of setting the context for how the information is used in your organization?
Yeah, it's setting the context for our organization. I've done some other kinds of training where you go in with a new subject area and they look at you askance and say, well, what does this have to do with me? How has the organization decided to apply this? And they want specific information about what they're supposed to do. So if you create that kind of structure first, at least this is how it works in my organization. And Mary, we're automotive as well, so kind of similar kinds of issues. Tell me what the process is, and then I'll just go and do it, kind of thing. So setting that context for the organization and then filling in with the technical knowledge, I think we'll see, because we just finished it. We'll see if that improves the basic understanding throughout the organization, but it'll take us about a year to figure that out.
Okay. Yeah, Mary, can I ask, is on your side, is there anything it sounds like your organization is a little more mature in terms of knowing what the open source risks are. Is there anything that's useful or that was useful to you to educate people?
On my first version, I use this OpenChain training material to create our training material. But now I'm thinking to do a improvement or update. Because when we do the training, I realized this OpenChain training material only focus on the consumption of open source, not for this distribute and contribute areas. I would like to merge these 3 areas into one training material, so the developers do not need to take 3 training 3 times different. So that's my reflection here.
Okay. Yeah, no, very, very fair point. You know, and I know everyone's creating things specifically for their organization, but if there's anything, you know, if there's pieces of it or anything you want, you know, to introduce to, you know, the OpenChain training material, you know, that's also wonderful if, or very open to that too. So.
One question when you mentioned these education videos, what's that? Do you have that online?
I will try to find a link or two to some of these. In the past, we've done some recordings of like presentations that Shane has done at conferences. And usually the point of his presentations, it's usually given at like a Linux Foundation or some other software community. So what he usually sets up is, you know, takes a few minutes to say, hey, you know, we all recognize there's open source risks and you know, does some brief amount of time in this level 1. But I think he really spends more of it in saying, hey, here's how we're solving it. This is OpenChain. Here's who we are. Here we have a specification and here's how it works. So I think at least the Shane video might be more of a kind of a level 2 item, but you know, we don't have a lot of produced content in video form. We mostly have slides and written
It
material.
would be good to have one. I mean, with
Yeah.
this cartoon or whatever, the voice and the stuff.
Yeah, that, you know, something really polished, right, would be nice.
Yeah. So I agree, Nathan. I'm you know, looking at LFC 193, we're not start thinking about pulling something together, you know, on that same level of being a training course, taking people through these different levels.
That's what I'm trying to when you do this kind of open source ecosystem, then you want to kind of gather all these areas and then you categorize it to give this which part is for developers, which part is for managers. So I think it's a overall picture, not instead of piece by piece.
Yeah, I will say, Mary, I think oh, sorry, Mary, were you going to say something?
No.
Oh, okay. I think one of the goals we had when we created like the training slides though is to create something that would be a good baseline that people could start from, because many companies, many industries, they have different goals or different priorities, so they need to adapt it to something they're doing. So I'm glad at least the slides helped you get a start and you didn't have to do it all from
Yes.
zero. You know, and if there's improvements that you think would be generally helpful for others, you know, we would love to have those improvements. But one of the challenges with doing videos is, you know, once they're done, they're pretty much done, and it's hard to do edits. If you know, it's hard to really create something that's just, you know, usable in its you know, original form for every single person, right? I think, you know, I do like the idea of this LFC 193 training course, kind of recommending things like that, because, you know, that is something that Linux Foundation keeps up to date and they keep in a pretty polished form. And if someone feels like they can use that in their organization, you know, they can just kind of take it and use it. And then that helps get them to level 2, where it seems like more of where our own community should be, you know, investing, you know, more of our effort. You know, if we spend maybe 20% of our effort in level 1, maybe we spend, you know, 60 hopefully in this area, level 2, helping people know, you know, what we're doing, what we're adding to it, right? But you know, I know we have a few minutes left. Could I get a little input from people on level 2, and then I think that would create a good space for us to, you know, take some notes and meet up again in a couple weeks. Like, is there any materials that's helped people figure out, and I should say materials or work groups or community resources, anything that's particularly helped you with knowing how to implement OpenChain or take the spec and turn it into process requirements in your org? Here I might suggest things like the policy template, right? I don't know if, I know we've gotten some good feedback on this one, but I don't know if anyone here has used that. Let's see, that's not going to open in my browser here, so I'll just point to that there.
One thing that I'm concerned about in your level 2 is that we're all of a sudden lumping OpenChain compliance and security compliance into one. Now, you know, they're two separate things. And organizations might not be working those together as one thing. For example, my organization is not. We have a separate security team. They're very focused on vulnerabilities and you know, making sure those get addressed and following up and all that. And they're taking that out of the hands of the open source team.
Yeah.
So, you know, we haven't even thought about, do we need to do an assessment on the security aspect? Because then it's a whole different set of people.
Oh, this is a very interesting topic because it's kind of overlapped, right? The security, either from security team or from open source team. I'm thinking of this question also recently.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But back to this question, is this conformal? I don't remember if it's must or mandatory in the specification or not.
The security one? No.
I think it's optional, right?
It's
Right,
it's a separate spec, yeah.
Yeah.
And I think what they're aiming at, I think, was to say, oh, you know, here's the compliance process you need to, you know, assure for license compliance, right? But then when it comes to security compliance, they might need some kind of similar information out of the same team or the same process, right? They need like lists of open source software and versions. You know, but Mary, you're right, Mary Matron, you are definitely right about, you know, them being different interests. And I think OpenChain tried to serve that by keeping the specs different. But I think you know, maybe we just need to make sure that we make that clear, right? Okay, make clear that specs interests differ, right?
Yeah, in a large company, I think security and open source are really two different topics and treated very differently.
Yeah.
It's kind of like, you know, the candy aisle and the vegetable aisle in the grocery store. Yes, they're both in the grocery store, but they're completely different types of products and probably completely different managers and different vendors. Everything is different about it, except they're in the same grocery store.
Yeah. I yes, very much agree. And whatever we create here has to work for both cases, right? Like some people are going to come and just comply with the license spec, right? Because they're doing something different in the security side.
Yeah.
Right. Whatever we create has to work for both cases.
I just want to comment here. I mean, from my perspective, try to get people to understand, you know, the whole OpenChain issue around licensing and all the rest of it. One uses the security issues as the entry point into the debate, and then they become conflated. I do agree that they're actually very different domains. But to get C-level people interested in the problem, one tends to use security as the entry point into the debate, and then the two issues become conflated, which is not what you want. you know, licensing and intellectual property ownership and, you know, your issues around copyright are very different from managing your SBOM or your SPDX definitions and so on. So I think we have to manage the relationship between the two quite carefully.
My thinking is for the security, let's say you have 100% source code in your company or in your product, then 80% to 90% is open source. So security of the open source is definitely a big issue in a company. For other security department, which is separated with the open source team, they are kind of governance all security stuff, including open source, including intellectual code, right?
Yeah.
So we need to handle
hardware. There's
Yeah.
hard security aspects in the devices and chips and stuff as well.
Yes. So open source security is kind of a subset of all security stuff.
Yes, agreed.
And I think there's going to be organizations out there that try to use, you know, if you put in a process that gets the license info for you, you know, maybe you use the same process to get the security info out as well, right? You know,
Yes.
there's a certain amount of overlap as well in the capabilities needed. But yeah, so I think that, but it's a very good point that we need to make sure the education material, you know, serves both sides though, or one or the other, right? So that will be something we'll have to do going forward. Can I ask though, and I know we're over time, I can let you go, but maybe just one last question. Does anyone have any particular materials that helped you in this phase though of understanding the spec or what to do? Did work groups help, or was it any materials?
Well, there used to be an Excel version of the self-certification questionnaire.
Okay.
It seems to have disappeared. We just did kind of a trial assessment to see if we had any gaps. And I ended up taking the PDF and then manually plugging all the questions into an Excel, because I can't do an assessment off of a PDF that I can't edit,
Yeah.
you know? So where's that Excel? I need that Excel.
Okay.
Anyway, we went through it a few times using the Excel, where you can like put in comments or, you know, assign action items and all that kind of stuff. And I do not like management by Excel particularly, but in certain situations it's good. Is this it?
You know, there's a Word document here, but I know exactly what you're saying because we use the Excel document, the same thing. We did the same thing.
Yeah.
Yep. So let me make a note of that. Thank you. That's super good feedback. Okay. Well, any last things from Gerald or Mary? Or Hutch?
No, good. Thanks, Nathan.
Okay. Well, you know, oh, sorry, Mary, anything from you?
No, I think when I started, I started with this basic training material and also with the Excel file. I don't remember what is the Excel file name, but it's kind of a lot of information there. It's quite a good Excel file.
Yeah. All right, I'm gonna dig that up. So I will find that for the next time around. All right. Well, you know what? I very much appreciate everyone's involvement. Great discussion today, and we'll follow up with Shane, and we'll get the next meeting set up, and just look forward to chatting more often. So, yeah, great to talk to you today.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, guys. Happy holidays.
Thanks for
holidays.
pulling us together. Cheers now.
Yep.
Merry
Cheers.
Christmas and a Happy New Year.
Yeah.
Yes, to you as well. So thank you.
Bye.
Okay. Bye.
Go.
Bye.